Welcome to the Elevating Leaders series, where we go beyond the headlines and straight to the people who are redefining insurtech and business transformation. We've caught up with the visionaries and the pioneers that are currently driving the industry forward, bringing you exclusive insights, strategies, and stories you won't hear anywhere else. If you're ready to go deeper, this is your front row seat to the future of insurance. I'm Miguel Edwards, and this is 5 Minutes.
I'm hearing elements of design thinking in that, where you're innovating on things, you're prototyping, you're testing, and you're coming back and you're looking at that whole loop.
Yep.
So that kind of forces me to ask the question, and you use the term product. How are you using that term product? Are you thinking about the insurance product, or are you thinking about productization of capabilities? Like, explain a little bit more about how you're thinking about that term product.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
I will use it in both terms.
Okay.
Because the insurance person in me wants to use product and say, well, like, that's a life insurance contract, right? But like, that is not a common saying that I will say to my team is like, the customer does not see the product as the contract. Mm-hmm. Their product is the end-to-end experience, right? And like, once you start thinking about that, then I do genuinely care about, well, gosh, what does the application feel like?
Yes.
How long does it take for them to get an underwriting result? What does the underwriting even feel like? When I want to make a change, like, that is part of the product that the customer is experiencing. And you have to really think about those key points along the way in order to continue to win in that customer's mind. And in the past, you would have just said, like, well, do the numbers work?
Yes.
If the numbers work, and we've got a contract that holds both us and customer to whatever we said that we would do, like, that's it. We've done it. Customers, thankfully, I guess, or unthankfully, because it requires a bunch of work on our end, but like, have progressed past that point in time where insurance company could do pretty much whatever they wanted to because the customer had no other alternative.
For sure.
And now they know better about like how customers or how companies can actually serve them as customers.
They have different comparison points now outside of our industry, and those expectations are bleeding over. From that perspective, though, Brian, talk to me a little bit about the cultural shift that must be required at an insurance company to think of the world that way. To think about, because I know I've struggled with that in my own departments in terms of how do I get people to think about a product orientation around the services that we're offering and those capabilities. What has that been like for you?
Oh man, it's tough. I agree, because like, we were previously a product focused meaning like insurance product focused company, trying to move to be a customer focused company. And so you can say the right things, you can tell them about the right things. One thing that I found that's been super helpful is when you're faced with like design challenges where you're trying to transform something, I like to use, well, imagine you were Google, how would you solve this problem? Imagine you're Amazon, how would you solve this problem? All right, imagine you're, I don't know, SoFi or something, like a fintech company. How might you solve this particular problem?
Right.
And you come to maybe different conclusions of like, oh, well, gosh, it's a little easier for you to think outside in that way than it is to like try and design it from your company's perspective, because you're, at least at Mutual of Omaha, the folks have been there for long enough that it's hard for them to wrap their mind around what that looks like.
Right.
So they only think in like incremental terms. Where if you say, well, gosh, this is how Apple would solve that problem. Like, oh, I get it. Now I'm understanding that the customer experience actually does matter, and I can use other companies as the example of a way to get there. So that's one of the things that I've tried to do to drive that cultural shift. But yeah, to that point, it's tough, man. I mean, folks have been working in the same way for a long time, and well, one of the other things I guess we've tried to do is like isolate teams and say, all right, team, your capability is to go, I don't know, improve underwriting or something, right? And like, if you are holding the cost steady and improving speed, you're doing the right thing.
Right.
If you're reducing the cost, holding speed, you're doing the right thing.
Right.
If either one of those start to go in the other direction, well, now we probably have a conversation about it. But ideally, you are serving the external customer and underwriting. And if you can keep both of those folks in mind, and you're like iterating towards, again, improving speed or decreasing cost, like, keep doing it. I actually don't really care what technology you're using underneath there. I don't care what else you're like doing underneath the hood.
Right.
If you've got happy customers and you're doing those things, like, you're doing the right thing from the customer and company perspective. And like, you give that kind of ownership to somebody and you start to teach them ways of thinking outside, like, things start to move a little bit faster from a culture perspective.
Agreed. No, that makes a lot of sense. What kind of pressures are you seeing, or I actually have a flip that? What kind of reception are you seeing to the adoption of AI in your particular alliance? Because we talk a lot about it in P&C, we talk a lot about it even in life and health.
Yep.
In your space, what does the whole AI conversation look like?
Boy, so far I've had a couple conversations at this conference about like enhancing the agent's work using AI. Mm-hmm. So we've got in our call center, the sales center, we have an AI tool that will coach the call center agent, or the customer mentioned they were in California, read the California disclosure and surface it for them.
Right.
Oh, they mentioned they were interested in or worried about like an accidental death. Mm-hmm. Here, you might want to pitch the accidental death product as a way to sell something to you. Like those are the types of things that happen on the prompting side.
Thank you for joining this episode of 5 Minutes. If you've enjoyed our discussion, we'd love for you to share it with anyone else you think might find it interesting. Also, please subscribe on whatever podcast platform you're listening on and hit that bell to stay on top of the game with our practical 5-minute episodes. We look forward to seeing you again next week.